The early access launch of Avowed is here, as well as the embargo being released so reviewers can now talk about their experiences with the game if they did get a review copy. And although a lot of people are saying this game is relatively good, what this game isn't is actually finished. There have been reviewers that have spent over 10 to 20 extra hours trying to get the credits just to roll for this game. And even worse, where the biggest amount of bugs are going to occur, it's in an area that reviewers are not allowed to show you.
It's one of the most broken games I've ever had the displeasure of trying to finish for a review in a long time, maybe ever. To put it in perspective, Avowed, by my estimation, should take you between 30 and maybe 40 hours of gameplay to finish, doing a lot of the side content stuff. I spent significantly longer than that trying to finish this game. By my account, between 12 and 15 hours extra replaying areas that I already finished, or just losing progress because of corrupted saves or busted quest lines and quest objectives that didn't trigger properly and would soft lock you, or any other number of various issues.
There are tons of quests right now that are supposedly bugged. At least on PC, there are corrupted save files to where 50% of the time almost, this game is not even going to open, or it's going to corrupt your save and you're going to have to go back and play an extra hour of gameplay to get back to where you actually were. And so many other bugs that are continuously being discovered, some that the studio actually knows about, and some that are brand new that they are just finding out about when these reviewers are going through the game. And that leaves me extremely worried, because if there is a day one patch for the early access or a day one patch when the actual game launches in 5 days, probably not everything's going to be fixed because of that issue, that people are just discovering bugs that the developers themselves do not even know about. Now, are all of these on console, all of these on PC? I'm not 100% sure. I have not gotten my hands on the game so far. I've just looked at a lot of reviews with people saying this, and a majority of them were on the PC. So Xbox might not have all of these same issues, but in general, I would absolutely stay away right now from the $90 early access version. Definitely get it on Game Pass. Do not pay for a game that is obviously completely buggy and is going to be more of a frustration to finish than actually enjoyable until they actually fix the game. What's even worse here is they came out and warned us that the game was going to be buggy. So why not delay this game? I talked about in my previous video, this game doesn't even make sense to come out right now because it's being sandwiched by two of the biggest games of this year with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, as well as Monster Hunter Wilds. You also have like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. You also have Civilization 7. You had Assassin's Creed Shadows before it got delayed again. There was no reason not to delay this game, with not only it being probably more successful in March, commercially at least, but also because you have all these bugs and now you've released an unfinished game in 2025 to an audience of people who are excited to play your game. It's not okay. But what is most upsetting here is a lot of people are saying the game is actually good. What they could play, or what they did play, was actually very enjoyable. And number one, just starting out with the environments, the story, and the setting in general. If you are a Pillars of Eternity fan, what we've heard from this game so far is that they do an absolutely amazing job making this entire universe something you can actually walk around in and explore.
By and large, I had a great time with Avowed. If you're coming from the Pillars series, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised how much this really captures the essence of the world of Eora. I know I loved that part more than anything else.
There's a lot of lore here, and a lot of lore drops in general that, again, if you are a fan of those series, you will enjoy this game even more because of. And if you don't understand this, there's an entire glossary within the game as well that will help you understand some of these things. So you don't necessarily need to play the PoE games to come in and play and enjoy this one. But if you do, it'll make you like this game even more because of the lore that this game does go into, does explain, and does give you more of. And there are tons of open-ended areas with a ton of different POIs within them for you to explore that are different from others. There's not a lot of reused stuff here because they did scale this game back from open world to make it a more open-ended experience that is able to be more handcrafted for the player. Unfortunately with this though, if you are a Pillars Pillars of Eternity fan, you'll notice a lot of things quote unquote missing here. Again, they probably weren't even planned to begin with for the game, but there's obviously not every single race in the game that you can play as the main character. You can only play, I believe, 2 different races, I believe the humans and the elves in this game, which there's obviously a ton more races within this franchise as a whole and with this in this IP. On top of that, there are classes that they did not put in this game, and this is mainly because of the genre shift from a top-down RPG to something that is actually first or third-person action RPG. And when this genre shift happens, there tends to be a lot that they aren't able to add in the game. Diving into the character creator here, it does look pretty good. There does seem to be a lot of options, and what's very good about this is depending on the class and the race that you end up choosing, as well as your character background and the starting attributes that you'll choose in the character creation, you are actually going to have different dialogue options or sometimes different completion results to certain quests that you do partake on out in the world. And you don't just pick a specific class in this game, it is a multi-class system, so there are fighter trees, there are ranger trees, and there's also wizard trees, all with very different abilities within them that you can mix and match to make the build that you want to play. But I definitely think it would have been very cool for them to add, like I mentioned, more classes here that are very unique to the PoE franchise, like the Cypher, for example. There apparently are some lore points on why a lot of these classes aren't added. If you know, Pillars of Eternity has like 11 different classes, which there's only 3 classes in this game with abilities that you can pick between. But apparently there are lore reasons why a lot of these aren't in there. I'm not sure for myself. You'll have to go watch some other reviews from people who have played the game to explain why some of these classes aren't in there, but it is still a bummer to me, regardless if it's a lore reason or not, especially because some of these, like I mentioned, were very unique to this franchise and were very fun to play.
And then you have the stuff that isn't here from the Pillars series. So in some cases, again, story reasons, it wouldn't make any sense. But stuff like the Cypher and the Chanter, I just don't really see a reason that couldn't have been in here.
But now, what do these different classes and abilities that you can choose from actually feel like? Well, we have seen so far that the magic and ranged abilities actually feel pretty damn good in combat, and you have a lot of different options here with all of the different abilities to make combat actually feel pretty damn versatile. However, we have heard, which I kind of expected because the combat did not look very good before this game came out, we have heard that the melee combat feels very underwhelming in regards to some of the other combat systems and abilities they have in the game, specifically with the magic and with the ranged abilities.
Right away, the biggest one for me was just melee combat really doesn't have a lot going on in comparison to other stuff. And I think the obvious expectation there was that you would mix and match it with the other two to make it feel better. But for people who want to play a straight up fighter, I don't think you're going to have a good time with that probably because there's just not much there.
And in my opinion, I actually expected the melee combat to be lacking here just because of what we've seen in the previews. It definitely looked like, at least in my opinion, a little bit lacking of impact and even a little bit like Skyrim was back in 2011 when that first released, which is not a great comparison here now in 2025. Now, a lot of people have said it feels better than it looks, and that again makes sense. I'm hoping that it does, but even if that's the case, I've definitely heard from a lot of reviews that it is underwhelming in a lot of ways comparatively to the other 2 classes. You will be able to dodge and step aside from some of the enemy attacks. You will be able to block. You will be able to parry as well. So there are more mechanics here on top of just swinging away and blocking, which is definitely welcomed. On top of this, you're going to be able to equip like 10 abilities at one time, which is an insane amount of abilities for a lot of first-person / third-person RPGs, which I really appreciate. On top of this, you will also have a quick item you're able to use in combat. So I think in general, the combat is going to feel pretty good, a lot better than at least what I think it personally looks like in a lot of the previews we have seen, which excites me in a lot of ways. I like when you're able to use a ton of different abilities at one time. I think that enables you to make a lot of cool builds and use a lot of different abilities from these different class trees to make an actual fun gameplay style that you enjoy as the player. Now, moving on to the progression and how are you actually going to make your character stronger aside from leveling up and using all these different abilities from these class trees that I mentioned? Well, one of the biggest things is obviously your attributes, that every single time you level up, you're going to be able to put points within. And these attributes are relatively standard, but going to give you some big bonuses based on what kind of combat style you go for here. You're going to have your might, which is basically strength. This is going to increase your damage and carrying capacity. You're going to have constitution, which is basically your stamina. This is going to give you your maximum health, and this is going to give you resistances to poison and bleeds. You also have dexterity, increasing your attack and action speeds, perception, increasing your critical hit chance as well as your maximum range, intellect, increasing your mana, or in this game your essence, as well as your elemental resistance, as well as resolve, which is going to give you plus maximum stamina as well as your second wind efficiency. Now in terms of other progression here, obviously like I mentioned, you have your active abilities that you can choose from. You also have passive abilities from the different skill trees. You have a godlike skill tree, which is going to be more of like an ultimate ability that you can get different passive points, and obviously an active ability to use as well. You can even have different abilities for your companions. I think there's 4 different companions total in this game, which all have different abilities and different ways to upgrade them as well. Now in terms of gear progression, you have a trinket slot, you have 2 ring slots, you have your main armor spot, you have your hands, your boots, your weapon, your offhand. You even have switching weapons to a secondary weapon system as well. So all of these are in there as well, and the gear actually has a lot of depth to it. They definitely take a book out of the ARPG genre in this sense, where there's going to be a lot of different modifiers depending on the rarity on your gear. There's going to be more modifiers on it. There's going to be unique items as well that could potentially be build defining in terms of what build you want to go down, or unlocking even more build opportunities for you to explore. So although progression, these systems themselves aren't groundbreaking, I definitely think it looks very good, and we haven't really heard anything bad about it, and it seems to have a lot of depth here. When you combine all of the active and passive abilities that you can multi-class between the 3 different classes in the game. You have your ultimate ability and all of the different companions and your companion abilities. When you add on to that your different attributes and all the modifiers on the different rarities of the gear as well. All of this is going to combine to really help you create a class or create a character that is going to have the gameplay style that you actually enjoy. So like I said, I don't think Melee sounds very good right now. We haven't heard great things about Melee. However, when all of this stuff is included as well, and you can mix and match Melee with other abilities, I think that's the point, and I think it's going to feel way better when you do that. Moving on to the companions here, we have heard relatively good things about the companions and how they all play a different role depending on what combat style that you do choose. So you have Kai, and he's going to be your big tank. You have Marius, and he seems to be more of your scout. And then you have a both ranged magical DPS as well as a ranged magical support, with the support's name being Giada, and I believe Yahtzee is how you pronounce the ranged DPS's name. And they are going to play a big role, number one, because you can choose exactly which one is going to actually help you out in combat the most, but you can talk to them and hear a lot about their lore as well and explore more about the world in general. On top of this, they're all going to have their specific quests, so you can dive more deep into their lore, into their character arcs just in general. And then on top of this, you will definitely be able to talk to them within your camp, and your camp is when you're going to do a lot of your crafting, your enchanting, and things like that as well. You can't do that outside of the camp, which definitely seems like a little bit of a bummer, at least to me, that you can't just do that in a town. But when you do go to your camp, you will be able to do that, which does sound relatively good. It's going to be a little hub that you can kind of step away from the world within. Unfortunately, in terms of the character personalities, they do seem to be a step down, and in terms of just their overall arcs as characters, it does seem to be a step down from previous Obsidian RPGs.
Never in a million years did I think I would play even the worst of Obsidian games, where I do all the companion quests, exhaust all the dialogue options, and still walk away after 40 hours being able to say, hey, Kai is all right as a character, I guess. Maybe it's because of Garrus's voice actor, but the rest really weren't interesting at all.
Now, it is confirmed that there's no romance options within the game, so unfortunately, I can't romance Giada. Now, lastly, I do want to quickly talk about, are there actual choices that are going to be meaningful in this game? And yes, if you watch some reviews, I don't want to spoil anything here, but there are definitely different things that are going to change the world in some pretty meaningful ways in this game based on your character's choices and your actions. And that is really what I want in an RPG. But unfortunately, the actual reactivity, not the consequences based on the actions the game is giving you, but the consequences based on whatever the hell you decide to do in this world, apparently that is lacking, and the characters in the world doesn't react in a way that you would really expect it to. And honestly, after coming from Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which is a masterpiece on world reactivity, this is a huge bummer and could be immersion breaking.
Oftentimes, it felt like the game wanted to be more reactive, but a lot of its reactions were hosted within just the text, but the actual character actions and the world itself would remain unchanged. And that felt like previous shackles from an older idea in a multiplayer game.
Maddie even talks about in his video that he burned one of his companions' houses down, and they just didn't necessarily care. Yes, they said they were displeased, but by the end of the game, they were still ride or die, which apparently that just didn't make sense into the world. I don't know what companion this is. I don't know their companion quest line, but it is definitely a bummer that there isn't that type of reactivity in the game. Now, on the flip side here, it does look like there are so many dialogue options that do open up based on the background you choose for your character in the character creation, as well as different things that you do throughout the game, and that is also very good to hear. So it is going to feel like an RPG in a lot of ways because those things open up, and to actually discover everything and to actually go through all the quests in the ways that you want, you might have to play the game multiple times. I've heard that the game does take about 30 to 40 hours to fully complete, doing a lot of side stuff as well, and again, you're gonna have to play it multiple times to actually see all the content, so it is gonna have that element of replayability there as well, so that is definitely good to hear. But all in all, bugs aside, this game seems like a pretty positive experience for those who have played it so far. No, it doesn't seem like it's a masterpiece by any means. There are definitely negatives here, like if you are one of those people who experience the bugs, it probably will ruin your experience of the game in a lot of ways. The melee combat looks like it could be improved, and we hear it can be improved. Obviously, the companions, some might like them, but others, like Maddie, for example, obviously do not like them, especially in comparison to previous Obsidian games. And then obviously you have that reactivity that we have seen in recent RPGs that definitely feels out of place if it's not there in obviously the new ones that are coming out. But by no means does any of this mean it's going to be a bad game per se. It just might not be the great masterpiece that people want from every video game nowadays coming out. Now, I will be reviewing this game when it comes out on the full release in a few days from now, and personally, I'm not going to buy the $90 early access version. I'm a broke boy, number one. Number two, I'm not going to pay $90 for a game that I have to put 20 extra hours in to complete. I just can't do that, especially for the $90 price tag, but I will try it out on Game Pass, and I will review this game because it was one that I'm very excited about. It's still one that I'm very excited about to play. But all in all, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Let me know down below, are you still excited for this game? Are you going to wait to play this game, or are you going to buy it today or play it on the day it releases in 5 days on the non-early access version? I would love to hear what you guys think about all of this down below. If you have played the game and you've been playing it today because it did release today, are you experiencing those bugs? And are you playing on Xbox or are you playing on PC? I would love to hear your guys' thoughts down below. Thank you guys for watching the video. Again, if you are new to the channel and you like gaming news and gaming reviews for RPGs specifically, but other genres as well, and you did like the video you see here, please like the video and subscribe. I appreciate you guys. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers. I would love to get there. So if you guys did like this video, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!